We have a new coffee that we're getting ready to launch here. This time it's from Brazil. And you might be noticing we have a lot of coffees in our lineup right now, and this is by design. We've been making some tweaks to kind of how we do our pour overs. We're going to lean into that. And with that, we're going to kind of flex our lineup a little bit more and have a couple more exclusives. But we also do a lot of wholesale too. So we like having a good variety of coffees in there for our wholesale customers also. So this coffee is the Fazenda do Condado, and it is from Brazil. And a lot of times with coffees from Central and South America, we'll see like Finca Vieja or Finca Pensamiento. And Finca just means coffee farm, and that's in Spanish. In Brazil, they speak Portuguese, so Fazenda is coffee farm. So this is from the coffee farm do Condado. And it's run by the Chaib de Sousa family. So Pedro Chaib de Sousa has actually been to our coffee shop a couple years back. He was making a tour through the Midwest and got to kind of cup coffee with him, which is really exciting. I believe this is his dad's farm. But really, really good coffee growing family, really kind of high quality stuff. And it's at a really high elevation. So Brazil typically has a lower elevation for coffee production. And as a result, you get kind of like simpler, really like user friendly, but like simpler tasting coffees. But this is kind of at the top of a mountain range. So we're at 1,100 meters above sea level. That creates a little more density and complexity to the coffee. It's a pulp natural. It's a pretty common processing method for coffees coming out of Brazil. But yeah, and I might rush through this a little bit here just because I do want to talk a little bit about how some of these things affect our decision making when roasting. And kind of what that means. So we'll kind of touch base on some of the stuff here quickly. We'll see this coffee, it tastes a lot like coffee. So on our donut chart, it's kind of broken into the black and the yellow parts or the black and the gold parts. The black part kind of represents like that typical coffee flavor that we think of when we think of coffee. And then the yellow part represents kind of the finer notes that you could find in it. So this coffee, it tastes like coffee. Flashback to like our Finca Lamina. That coffee did not taste like coffee. It tastes like grape Laffy Taffy, which sounds weird, but it really does, or did. But this coffee, on its part of it that doesn't taste like coffee, it also tastes like a little bit like cranberry and fig. Those are super faint notes. We get some like sweet orange citrus in there and some kind of milk chocolate notes. This coffee, it's a very subtle coffee, so that stuff kind of lays under the surface a little bit. And you can see kind of moving up our balance to adventurous. This is way on the balance side. Roast level, we're keeping it pretty light. And it's pretty neutral. So that's the beauty of Brazilian coffee, is it's neutral and it behaves well in espresso, it behaves well on your batch brew. And in skilled hands, it could really come to life as a pour over. So, but I want to take the opportunity to kind of talk about how understanding the origin of a coffee affects and influences how we choose to roast it and how it presents finally to the end customer. So I've got a couple of animations I threw together for y'all here, and we'll look at the first one. So I believe in the last video I talked a little bit about roasting and the rate at which kind of certain traits develop and then leave coffee. And depending where we stop a roast will kind of determine the window into that coffee's flavor that we get. And if we were to take a coffee like from Kenya, coffees that typically have a lot of acidity to them, and we keep it in that light roast range, what is that going to do? Well, it's going to keep a lot of acids in there. The acids don't really roast out, and we're not going to really develop the kind of sugars and the more bitter aspects of the roast. So you're going to end up with a very kind of bright, sharp, it's going to be citrus, kind of fruit-like. It's going to be more in the sour domain for the taste, and it's going to probably be pretty adventurous. And that's kind of what a lot of coffee aficionados look for in a coffee. They want to kind of experience that kind of like bright, identifying characteristics of a coffee that you get from its acidity. The cool thing with Brazil, though, is Brazil naturally has lower levels of acidity in it. So we could take a Brazil and we could keep it at the same roast level and quickly look at what that effect is on its profile. And you kind of end up with a more balanced cup of coffee. And it's going to really be kind of like mellow, neutral. It's going to be kind of sweet. It's going to be a little simpler. It's going to have that like smooth, balanced taste to it. And this is a great opportunity because a lot of what people don't like about coffee is they don't like the bite from the sourness or the bitterness that could develop with darker roasts. So um, we can keep Brazilian coffee pretty light and still develop that kind of like sugar content piece of it and keep its acidity in there. But since that acid part is kind of lower down in the mix, we end up with this like really just smooth, neutral, mellow cup of coffee. And some people get maybe a little bored with that, but it is such a great way to get people into coffee who maybe don't like some of the harsher elements of coffee. So it's a really kind of unique origin in that sense. Like we get to do that with this, um, and it makes it just also very usable. It makes it function well in a batch brewer, but there's still enough acid on tap where we could kind of activate that and liven it up with a pour over. So I love Brazilian coffee. It's kind of a unique experience that it's unfortunate a lot of kind of specialty coffee companies turn their nose up at, but it's always a crowd favorite for us. But it also gives us that opportunity to like kind of really have like different colors of coffee, if you will, like stuff that kind of runs the full spectrum from traditional to like super contemporary, bright and exciting to kind of this like really sweet, mellow, kind of like velvety smooth cup of coffee. So I encourage you to get familiar with it. Brazil is kind of one of those outlier tastes of an origin. It has its own kind of unique identity to it. And it's just a great way to kind of get familiar with the many kind of profiles of coffee that are available. So let me know your thoughts. Give it a whirl in the Stag and tell me what you think about it. All right, take care.